Look, I think that Australians are realising that we are going to have to tighten our belts on a number of fronts. And it's interesting that with all the talk about the global financial crisis, and there's so much talk about it, that Somalia is out of the headlines. And why aren't we all saying, let's donate $2 to every Australian, donate $2 to the Somalian famine relief? And we're all complaining that we're going to have to spend another $5 on electricity. We're not going to have as much money to play with. We're incredibly rich. We're very well placed compared to the rest of the world. And we just seem to be obsessed with worrying that we might not have just as much as we thought we might have to, to see our retirements through. And I think our priorities are wrong.
So briefly, the carbon tax should stay.
Yeah. Well, I just think it's really mischievous of Kelly to suggest that Wayne Swan and the government are putting their heads in the sand and pretending that what's happening overseas won't have any effect. They're all saying, of course, it's going to have an effect. Nobody's suggesting that it's not going to have an effect. But what they are saying is that we are doing everything we can to correct a decade or more of lacking infrastructure that the previous Howard government just ignored.
No, they were Labor state governments, Noni.
They weren't Labor state governments. We're talking big picture things here. But I just think it's really important that Australians understand that we are going to have to tighten our belts.
Is that going to have an effect, to go to the question, is that going to have an effect on the Labor government's popularity, do you think?
Well, I certainly think if the government is continually talked down and if the government's successes are not made more of, I can't imagine why the derisory election campaign that they waged at the last election, why that happened. They need to talk more about their successes. And, I've had a lot to do with 2-year-olds, and I think Australians are heartily sick of Tony Abbott's case of the terrible twos, where he just says no to everything.
When it came to the building the school halls revolution, and no, it's actually a legitimate point, Noni, because even the government's even the government's own report, Augur report, said that billions of dollars had been wasted on overpriced school halls.
Do you believe there is an unusually high level of disrespect towards the Prime Minister? And does it have anything to do with the fact that she is a woman?
Noni Hazlehurst.
Yes. I think there is an absolute lack of respect for politicians in general in the community. I certainly think there's a lack of respect shown towards Julia Gillard. I'd be more concerned about the shock jocks undermining her leadership, actually. And the danger is that it makes the public more cynical. And I'd rather see a series about them than someone with big ears and budgie smugglers, frankly. Not a good look. Who would you cast?
Well, I actually think the office of Prime Minister is denigrated when the Prime Minister says one thing 6 days before an election and then completely goes back on it immediately after being elected. I think that means that the Prime Minister, in fact, has got a credibility problem. I think the office of Prime Minister, in fact, becomes denigrated when a Prime Minister in office is knifed and loses
Kelly,
their job.
She said what she said. You've interrupted everybody else.
Can I just say that all politicians seem to have a problem with knifing their leaders? I think you probably remember that yourself.
And to come directly to your point about our Prime Minister, I think, yes, she has copped some language that would not be addressed to a male Prime Minister. I think there's a problem.
Provocatively so. Alan Jones actually calling her Jew liar to her face and implying that no other politician has ever lied. And it reminds me of when John McCain had to address a woman when Obama and he were fighting their election, and a woman in the audience said, "I'm frightened of Obama, I think he's an Arab." And McCain actually said, no, I have to say he is a good man. He's not an Arab, ma'am. Trust me on that. He's a good man.
You could be both, of course.
Well, you could be both, but I just, no one... I don't recall Alan Jones ever addressing anybody else in those terms to their face, and I think that's setting a really bad example to people who are fearful and ignorant and who regard him as somewhat of a god. I think the point you make about the blue-collar workers that he appeals to, these are the people who are losing jobs. These are the people whose jobs are disappearing and who are very fearful, and so they respond to fear. And I think that's part of the reason why Tony Abbott's had such success.
I mean, when Tony Abbott...
Come on! How can you say there's not a fear campaign?
Because
crash and burn, doomsday.
When Tony Abbott goes out...
Everything they do is wrong.
Well, the government can present an alternative. Now, the government has refused to present an alternative because every
what?
single government minister to the facts that have been presented on the table regarding a carbon tax.
No,
the fact that not one of them would come
Tony,
to a
I've
carbon
got to say
tax.
something.
Okay, all right.
I think it's really interesting that the opposition has taken the moral high ground here after their well-documented shambles during the Tampa period. But I do think that it has to be a bipartisan issue. I think we've got to stop pretending that anyone's got the answers. There are always going to be boats. There are always going to be desperate people in shocking circumstances wanting to leave the situations that they're in. And I think we need to reach out, as Fraser and Hayden came to some arrangements together, and have a bipartisan approach to this and stop pretending that one side has all the answers and the other side has none. It's ridiculous.
Do you think that you've contributed to the continued weakening of moral and ethical standards by the normalisation of such language?
The reason this book has gone feral throughout the world is because it resonates with almost everyone who's ever had a young child in our society and who is absolutely flabbergasted that they may be functioning adults out in the business world, but for the life of them they can't make a small child go to sleep. So I was very pleased to do it.
Is this the way to do it, swearing at them?
Anyone with half a brain knows it's not a book for children. No.
Bet your bottom dollar, a lot of Australians listening to this would be disgusted by that. They would be disgusted by that.
Yes? It's the kind of response that ignorance engenders about what was happening. If you're going to worry about the welfare of young children, why don't we give the people who are in control of advertising standards a little bit more teeth?
They're not
so that, hang on, can I
television.
finish?
They're not
I'm not swearing on national television. No. They put it on. I didn't put it on. And, you know, if parents have got half a brain, and I assume most of them do have at least a half a brain, they understand that what I did is for them.